We have about 36 participants already joined. We have 143 registered, so we will be waiting a few more minutes before we go live. Martin Donovan is asking me, yes, we realize you are now live. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Martin. Martin Donovan is together with us today. He's from Mixed Meetings, published from Hong Kong, but published throughout Asia. He's one of our supporters today, together with PCMA. That's right, we have already 42 participants live. We really encourage people to ask us questions through the Q&A instead of chat. Very well. We have Niall from Ireland, also joining us. Thank you, Niall, for joining us today. If I knew how to put music, I would. Hi, Johnny, you're all good? You can join us
Very well,
anytime.
thank you. Yeah. Very well. The sun is shining here in London at the moment. It's we're in for one of the hottest days of the year so far, I think.
All right.
For the first time since lockdown's begun, I've worn a shirt every day, but for the first time today, I have shorts on.
Very well. Don't show us now, please.
I'm not going to show you. Don't worry. I'm not going to show you. But it's warm today, so I've got my shorts on, but I'm still wearing my shirt. So that's maintained. I'm maintaining that dress code. So
here we are already in the tropical mood. It's May, so we are a thunderstorm throughout this day. So it can be sunshine or a storm anytime. I guess it will be raining soon here. Pouring rain. All right, I think we are well into our presentation. We have 53 participants. We had 143 people registered for today. I mean, obviously the theme for today's virtual team building is something quite new around the world. And together we have here today Johnny Etzer is one of the leaders in this new type of events. He's one of the leaders in this team building industry. He will be talking about his experience. We have also here together Paris Stevens. He's head of marketing of Wild Goose, the company that Johnny Etzer heads. And we also have here under the label as MISE Macau, we have Anna. Anna is working for MISE and is managing this webinar in the background. I also would like to mention that please, those that would like to interact with us, don't wait until the Q&A. Please raise all the questions you have before, as you have them. Be spontaneous, raise these questions in the Q&A, and we will be eventually even interrupting the presentations to raise the questions in the right time, in the right moment, or otherwise we will be selecting the best questions at the Q&A session at the end. And that's it, the introduction for today. It's would like to have another word of thank you for PCMA for this great partnership. This is the third webinar in a series of 3. The first webinar was done by myself, was an introduction to virtual events, was quite broad. The second webinar was a fantastic panel head by PCMA with the different experiences from different companies about how to convert a live event into a virtual event. And today we have here virtual team building, which is another new topic around the world. So Yeah. Having said that, I'll pass the word to Johnny Etzer. Please, Johnny, I'll be switching off my camera to give you unmute my microphone for a while. As we talked before, I might interrupt with some questions from the audience or from questions even from this side. So thank you very much, Johnny Etzer. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Bruno, and thank you for having us here for this really interesting session. We're going to be covering a lot of interesting topics. I'll kick off with a little bit of background about Wild Goose and myself. We're going to talk a little bit about the current situation. We've been doing some surveys amongst our clients, and we're going to do some polls on this session today as well, to understand what customers are saying, what are the challenges that they're facing. And that's given us rise, I guess, to a few predictions about how we see virtual team building looking in the future. How we've adapted to this new environment, because we weren't running virtual team building solutions longer than 3 months ago. So this is an area where we've had to adapt, but we've also recognized a number of benefits to virtual team building. And, you know, through these times, we've seen a lot of opportunities around virtual team building that I think bring new solutions to people to bring their teams together. So we're going to be looking at some of those and looking ahead to the future. And then we'll obviously have an opportunity for a bit of a summary and Q&A at the end. But as Bruno mentioned, there will be an opportunity to ask questions throughout, and you have a little question button at the bottom of your screen where you can ask questions that may be fielded during this presentation. So we're going to start with a quick poll, which Anna's going to activate in a minute. And this is just to find out what is your business area. So if you just literally 15, 20 seconds, please highlight the box which best represents your business and the business in which you are. So please do activate that, and we'll see the results very shortly. And maybe Anna, you can give me an indication when we're having a good level of response. And yeah, which area of business. This will just give us a really nice feel and a nice sort of temperature check for who we have here on the meeting with us. So that would be great if you can just tick one of those boxes. So
hi Johnny, we're good. I'm going to share the results now.
Okay, so we've got a good percentage of people from the travel industry and the hotel and venue sector. Again, a good representation from DMCs and team building specialists, as well as some AV production businesses and a few that fall under other. So that's a really nice mixture actually between potentially people that are internal bookers as well as suppliers to the industry. So thank you very much for that. That's really good to give us a bit of a feel for that. And I guess another quick poll is, have you done a virtual team building activity before? Either organised as part of your within your business, or whether you've attended something in the last few weeks. So again, that'd be quite good just to get a bit of a feel for the sort of experience and the knowledge that we have in the room. So really simple yes or no. Have you done a team building activity before? Either as an organizer, you've organised one maybe for your company or for a client, or perhaps you've attended one. So yeah, let's give it another 5 seconds. That should be a fairly quick yes or no response from people, and we'll get a bit of a feel for what the experience is in the room. So Anna, how's that looking now? So no, so a vast majority of people haven't done anything virtually so far, but still a good third have. So that's a really interesting outcome from that. So thank you for sharing that. And the third poll is how often do you run team activities for your employer? So if you're maybe you work within an organisation, or perhaps you work at an agency or at a hotel or venue, how often are you organising team activities for your clients or for your employers? So again, if that poll pops up, and that would be really good to see. So either for your own employees, or perhaps if you run a small agency and there's only a few of you, or one or two of you maybe, how often are you organising them for your clients? And again, this will give us a good little bit of insight that we can fall back on during this session. Let's give it another 5 seconds. So how are we looking on that, Anna? So again, we have a large, almost half of everyone in the room here is looking at annual events. Quite a high percentage of weekly. That's interesting to see. Quarterly, again, is quite, I guess, expected as a sort of traditional quarterly and annually. So again, that's really, really helpful. And like I say, we're going to be referring back to some of those stats as we proceed through the session. So no, brilliant. Well, listen, let me kick off with a little bit of a background to Wild Goose. I formed the business back in 2004, way before technology was an integral part of our everyday lives. I think we were all probably on email back then, but we didn't have the iPhone, the iPad, high-speed internet. How did we survive, hey? But we were formed back in 2004. But since 2011, we've been delivering technology-based team solutions. So we built our first app in 2011. And we've been delivering all of our events and all of our team activities using that technology ever since. We've had sort of 2 or 3 versions of the tech since then. And we're part of a global network where we license our technology globally. We have over 30 partners around the world who are Wild Goose partners. I'm going to talk a little bit more about them in a minute, but a huge amount of experience delivering last year over about 4,500 events for about 250,000 people around the world. And certainly since middle of March, when we all started to feel the impact of the COVID-19 situation, we have delivered over 150 virtual events. And obviously I know a lot of you will be dialing in from the Asian Pacific region, and this is just an idea of where we have some of our partnerships within your region, within your time zone. So you'll see we've got a good level of experience, and I know some of them are on the call today from Macau and Hong Kong, Thailand, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and just off the map we have India as well. So we have some really good experience in the region where I know a lot of you will be dialing in from. And that experience, like I say, extends across the whole network, even across our network into Europe and North America, so and South and Africa as well. So a really good global network of experience, and that's given us a really good background as well. We've been working very closely during this period, having weekly calls as a network to really look at how we adapt our offer to this new environment. So a quick poll here is, I just want to get a bit of a temperature check, because we're going to go into some survey results in a minute. We've been surveying some of our customers in the last couple of weeks. So it'd just be good to get a little bit of a check here from the audience about, other than team engagement, are there any other team issues that you are facing, that you're seeing within your own organizations? So what do you say are probably some of the key issues here? Because we've asked this same question to our customer base, so it'll be interesting to see whether the results are similar. So yeah, so that's other than team engagement, any other team issues that you're facing within your own organizations? So maybe just give that a few more seconds, and then we'll see what the results are looking like. So Anna, how's that looking?
Give us 2 more seconds. People still replying.
There we go. There's a few more options on this one than the previous one.
Yeah.
So.
Let's give a bit time to read it. Yeah, I think we're good to go. I'll end the polling now.
Okay, let's have a look. So the biggest response there is remote working adjustments, followed quickly by team communication. And again, I think that's again, unsurprisingly, a lot of companies are having to adjust to working remotely. We know that. We know that's been a big shift for a lot of people who aren't used to working in this way. And the impact on team communication is an absolute key as well. So I think that's a really interesting result about some of the impacts that you're facing as teams. I'm going to hand you over to Paris. Paris Stevens is our head of marketing here at Wild Goose. She's been doing a lot of the surveys that we've been internally, and she's just going to talk a little bit about some of these survey results that we found. Over to you, Paris. Don't forget to unmute. Oh, Anna, you might need to unmute, Paris.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, so as Johnny said, we have sent quite a large survey out recently to our corporate database, and we really wanted to get an understanding of the current market conditions, what frustrations people have when it comes to team building, how people are measuring team engagement at the moment, and also what prevents corporates from running team events more often. And we had a really great response. So we had 160 people filling out the survey, and we gathered some really insightful data. So as you can see from the slide, we found that budget and time constraints are the main reasons respondents don't book team events more often. We found that remote working adjustments, as we've just seen on the poll right now, and team communication, collaboration, and maintaining a positive mindset are the biggest challenges that corporates face at the moment, other than just general team engagement. And then when it comes to gameplay and interactive virtual team events, respondents kind of told us that collaborative gameplay, team play, and a competitive element are the most important features.
I think we're losing you a little bit, Paris. I think we're losing you a little bit, Paris. I don't know if that was me or whether that was your end. So just on that last point, I think that was, we're finding that any sort of games and solutions that enhance collaboration are really important, as well as team play and maintaining an element of competition are also very important features. So, no, brilliant. Thank you, Paris. That was really, like I say, a really good results we had from our survey. And it's interesting that the top two things that we've just highlighted here on the poll have been replicated by the top two things that we found from our own survey. So there's a nice bit of consistency there. Thank you, Paris. And we've spent quite a lot of time looking at our predictions for the future. I know making predictions at the moment is perhaps a little bit of a risky business, but certainly looking at our predictions, and we think virtual team building is going to be something that stays with us for a while. I think the environment in which we will find ourselves, and I'm very conscious that we have a multinational global audience here who all have governments that are implementing measures in slightly different ways. And I think the reality is, though, we do believe that virtual team building will be here to stay, but also that will start to shift into hybrid team building. So it's also about how do we deal with a situation when we have some people back at work, but also some people working remotely still, because I think some of the predictions we're seeing is that as we break down geographical boundaries, as we have more of a remote workforce, that will change how we recruit people. Suddenly recruiting someone who's not within commuter distance of your office might seem less important, and therefore the trends will be of an increasingly spread out workforce, even within your own countries and your own regions. So I think that sort of mixture of hybrid and virtual are absolutely going to be here to stay and follow some of the trends that we're going to see in society. And as a result, getting people together for bigger events, and it was interesting from the poll earlier where we looked at how often people run events. There was a lot of responses around quarterly, biannually, and annually. Our prediction is actually that probably smaller, more regular events and engagements will become the norm for an increasingly remote workforce, because bringing people together takes time and it takes money, and we need to, and it takes cost. So actually, smaller, more regular events that bring people together for a shorter period of time, we think will be something that will grow in the future. And it's all about keeping teams feeling connected, and that'll be the main reason behind that, because with an increasingly remote workforce who don't see so much of each other, how do you maintain that feeling of connection? How do you maintain your company culture? These are going to be important questions for the future that we're all going to have to deal with, not just within certain sectors. I think this is going to have an impact on every single sector across the globe. So in terms of how we've adapted, we moved and we were lucky because we are underpinned by technology. Technology has been a key part, as I said at the top of this presentation. It's been a key part of our business for the last 9 years. So we worked very quickly to transfer some of our formats into virtual solutions that we could deliver for clients. And we took a view that we were going to combine video conferencing software with our app. And we felt that would be a really nice way to build engagement in this environment. And it was all about collaboration, building culture, but also giving people a social connection, an opportunity to come together with purpose. And that was a really important part of what we wanted to try and develop with our solutions. So we've very much taken technology and video conferencing and combined it with our app, because we believe that that fusion of technology with the human touch is really, really important. So the vast majority of our activities we deliver in this format, where we bring people together into a video conference environment, and then we push them out into smaller teams where they work together on games and solutions that are powered by our app. Another change we've had to make with the technology is that every single person within a team needs to be downloading our app to play the game simultaneously at the same time. Because we found that whereas before, when we were running events in a physical environment where people were together, we might have one device in the team and everyone would be working off that single device. Whereas now, of course, you've got a team of 5 where all 5 people are not together. And in the future, where some of those people may be together and some of them won't be. So we've had to make adaptations within our technology to allow for that to happen, so that everyone's engaged, everyone's taking part, everyone's contributing, and it's building that collaborative environment and getting people working together. So that's been a big shift that we've had to change within the technology. And then we've looked at how we've brought in different themes for different scenarios, because we've recognized that there are sometimes people want to just come together in a social environment, which is where a quiz or our virtual away day are quite suitable. A virtual escape room, people love escape rooms, and we've brought that to the technology platform. It allows people to be slightly more collaborative, a more cerebral activity where people are going to work quite closely together. And then at the other end, we have our daily kickoff, which is inspired by that sort of daily opportunity to do something that's motivational as a team, as an ongoing activation over 30 days to build community amongst your employees. So lots of different solutions that have been designed for different environments, and that's been how we've had to adapt to this world. And that will continue, because of course, as we move through the different stages of this of the COVID-19 situation, there's going to be different challenges that are thrown up, and we've had to adapt so far, and we know that we will have to continue to adapt into the future. I think the biggest thing that we've noticed is the many benefits of virtual team building. Now, you know, we are all we're humans, we like social interaction, and I'm sure that's something that everyone on this call misses, is not seeing more of their friends, their family, their colleagues. We all miss that, but there are undoubtedly, I believe, some real benefits of virtual team building and virtual events generally. I think they're much more inclusive, because if you're running an event for an afternoon in your local city centre, or you're bringing people together in a hotel, you know, you're asking your team to be away from home for a whole day or half a day or a few hours. Now that doesn't necessarily is easier for some than others. You know, if you're the primary carer of your children or an elderly relative, or perhaps you're heavily pregnant, or you've just had, you know, just been unwell, there's lots of reasons why you may not be able to attend a team get together. Whereas as soon as it's done virtually, the barriers to entry for your team become almost non-existent, because we're all working from home. We all have access to this sort of technology as companies. And therefore, I believe it is more inclusive. It does allow us to bring people together from every sector of our business. And it also, therefore, translates to a lower cost. You know, the cost of bringing people together, as I'm sure you will all see, is very high. And like I say, not saying it's not valuable and there's not times for that. But actually, I think that cost becomes prohibitive sometimes. And I think going back to our survey results and the poll that we saw here today, one of the key reasons that people don't come together more often for team activities is time and cost. And again, I think that directly translates to having quarterly, biannually, or annual events, because they take time to organize. You have to find time in your schedules to bring people together. You have to have the budget to do it. These are all barriers to doing it more often. So that's, again, one of the benefits of virtual, because actually if you do a 1 hour activation or a half an hour exercise with your team, it literally is half an hour. People jump in, they do the exercise online, and then they come apart again. So that sort of benefits of virtual, I think, are from a time perspective is really key, and less time away from the office as well sort of translates across into that. So I think that there's lots of benefits there. Clearly there's an environmental benefit, and we've all been reading about the benefits to our environment, the fact that we are, we're not flying around the world as much, we're not leaving our houses as much. And I think that will resonate with corporates who are looking to have a positive impact on environment. And we'll see virtual events as one part of the solution for that. So as a result, virtual events are going to be easier to use on an hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And that's where we see some of the key benefits of virtual over perhaps more traditional events that we've all been used to doing in the past. I'll see you pop up, Bruno, on my screen. You may well have some points to add to this. You're on mute at the moment. I think Anna may need to unmute you. There we go.
I just, this slide actually was the most surprising for me when I saw the presentation, and I imagine it would be surprising to many people that are watching us. So please feel free to ask us questions in the Q&A now. This is quite surprising that in the end, I mean, virtual can have so many benefits that it might become a real trend in the market. And this was the benefits that it can bring to companies and to the engagement and the motivation of people were surprising to me. So please feel free to ask questions regarding this and other questions that Johnny will continue to talk. Thank you, Johnny. Just to mention this, just to raise more, more dialogue with our audience. So please don't be shy. Send us questions, as many as you want, please.
And I think a really good example of this, actually, Bruno, is within our own global community of Wild Goose partners. We have an annual conference. We get together. We've done it the last couple of years in the UK, and obviously that takes a lot of time, a lot of big commitment from everyone to be there. Whereas actually, since the COVID-19 situation has started, we're now speaking as a community every week with weekly calls. We're coming together much more often. I think we've built much stronger relationships in the last 8 weeks.
Definitely.
I think it's been really, it's been really interesting to see that, hasn't it? Yeah,
we talk more about work, and we get together after our weekly meetings, and it's been quite interesting. The Wild Goose Network is a really a good example of how the virtual meetings and how the virtual connection can actually in a way or another complement or even replace, as we are feeling now, the live events. But that's really a good example.
No, indeed. So that was like I said, I think through all of the challenges that we've faced, and I know that that people on this call, we've got suppliers, we've got hotels and venues. I know that these sectors have been very heavily hit by some of the rules and regulations that have come in, and there's going to be big challenges to recover from that. But certainly, like I say, from a virtual perspective, we do see that there are some benefits to bring people together in slightly different ways, to build relationships in slightly different ways. And of course, we're all looking to the future. How long will we be working like this? And I think going back to some of the predictions that I was bold enough to put up at the beginning of this presentation was, I think that we will see some really big seismic shifts in how we work and behave and integrate with our colleagues. And I think that whilst when COVID-19 comes and goes, there will be a lasting impression that's been left behind and lasting change of how we are going to continue to work. Are we going to have offices as businesses? Are we going to spend that money on doing that? Some of us will, but I dare say some of us are having those very conversations internally at the moment. We know that hybrid is coming in this increasingly remote workforce. We have to find ways to engage with people, not just in a purely virtual way, but in a more hybrid way when we have teams physically together whilst others are still working remotely. And how do we continue to connect and build teams in this increasingly virtual world? How do we maintain that company culture? How do we ensure that what is special about our organization continues to be special, even if we don't have the opportunity to bring people together physically and build that culture in that way. And the other question we're looking at is, can social distancing team engagement solutions work? So we're starting to see some inquiries from clients who are saying, well, when we start to come back and we start to be in a real in-life environment, are we able to still do team activities but maintain social distance? So that's quite an interesting challenge from a technology point of view. It's a challenge that we think we have a solution for, but it is going to be a challenge that is going to be facing us, is how do we continue to engage people when they can't be so close to each other? Because so much traditional team building is about being in close contact with other teammates, whether that's building something, filming something, creating something together. So we have to think as team building providers, we have to think about how do we engage people in a world that may be more aware of personal space and the impact of social distancing rules and regulations that some of our governments may well impose for many, many months to come. So I think there are lots of big questions for the future, not just in our sector, but obviously broader than that. But certainly the impact on our sector, we continually have to be seeking solutions to adapt to the world as it will become in the future. So I think that's kind of come to the end of my bit. We've got one more poll. I'm really interested in, after this webinar and after perhaps some of the things that you've heard us talk about so far, and this isn't the end of the session, we've got Q&A in a minute, but would you propose remote team building to your clients or within your company? So we had 69%, I think at the beginning of the presentation, said that they hadn't done an activity. I don't know whether that was a virtual activity. I'm not sure whether that was because they didn't want to, perhaps they didn't see the value, or maybe you weren't aware that such solutions existed. So I guess now you've come to this session, would you now consider that? Would you see this as a viable option to bring your teams together and to promote teamwork in a way in which we can't perhaps rely on traditional methods? So it'd be really interesting to see the outcome of this. So Anna, I don't know where we're looking at on the responses.
We're pretty good. 71% voted already.
Last few of you, maybe. Let's hope
Give
it
a
2 or
couple
3
more
more
minutes.
seconds.
A couple seconds, yeah. There you go. A few more answers. All right, I think we're good to go. I'll end the polling now.
Let's see what people say. So that's really interesting. So 71% of people, so almost a complete flip. So 69% of people hadn't experienced a virtual team activity before. 71% now would say they would consider this for their clients or their corporations. So that's really interesting. And maybe you had that opinion before you joined this, or maybe we've helped to open your minds to some of the opportunities that exist out there. So maybe, I hope it's a bit of both. So I think it's really interesting. And for those of you that are unsure, what we're seeing is actually quite a lot of clients coming to us who are saying, well, we're not sure whether this is right for our teams. We'd like to do something. Maybe we could do a small event for some of our senior team or for a certain department and judge the impact. And that's quite a nice sort of low risk way of exploring this as an area. So that's really interesting that we've got a really good shift there of people who would consider this. Because I know one thing for absolute certain, if we talked about virtual team building 3 months ago, I'm not sure we'd have got the same response. I think our minds have all changed in this current time about how we have to think differently and adapt to this environment. So I think it's interesting that now we have such a high percentage of people would consider this. So on to the Q&A session. I think we've had a lot of questions coming in throughout the session, which I know, Anna, you've been looking at.
We have a few.
Maybe there's a couple we can share and talk amongst ourselves about. So fire away. I think Bruno's in the room. There we go.
Hi. I think I would like to pick up from here with the last slide, and 71% of the audience just asked us, just said that they would propose remote team building to their clients. So I think this is a good result, but let's ask the audience, what would be the greatest challenge that you would have in proposing these activities to your clients? So, all right, we are now all used to Zoom, to communicate with teams, using video, using green screens, using all this technology. But anyway, now if you guys would like to propose this to your clients, what are the major challenges you have? So please feel free to send us questions in this regard. In the meantime, we have two questions here that arrived before.
Yeah. So I'll start with one from Adam. Adam says, is asking team building activities that require an order, example, who goes first, second, etc. Have you found a fun way of forming an order other than just assigning people a number? Assigning people numbers can take some time, so it would make sense to turn this process into an exercise, fun game. And I think this question would be better answered by Johnny. So,
yeah, well, we use Zoom as a video conferencing solution. And the reason we do that is it allows us to allocate teams and people into teams automatically. So when we bring everyone into the main conference facility, we bring them into the main room, and then we can push people out into breakout rooms. So that process of actually allocating people into teams can be incredibly quick, literally take less than 10 seconds, even for very large groups. And on Zoom, you can have up to 50 breakout rooms. So for groups of up to sort of 250 people, we find ourselves using that as a solution to allocate teams and make that a very quick, seamless process. So that's certainly our recommendation and why we recommend Zoom. We're not sponsored by Zoom or anything like that. We just find that it's a very effective platform in this environment. I hope that answers your question. So if there's anything else to add, feel free to ask a secondary question. But certainly that's how we're proposing that teams are done.
right. We have one question in the chat. I'll ask you guys, please do it in the Q&A. It's easier for us to see it, but I think this one's quite interesting, and also for you, Johnny. Are the events facilitated, or do teams manage the events themselves? What to use as an alternative when clients are not able to use Zoom, as some corporates are restricted on Zoom usage?
Yeah, so there's two questions in there. The first one was about we do provide facilitators for all of our activities at the moment. We are looking at how we can offer solutions in a self-managed way, which we've been doing for many years before COVID-19. So we've always offered fully managed events and self-managed events where people can run them themselves. And we're looking at how we can adapt those to a virtual environment. But no, we provide a virtual facilitator who takes the strain, meets you and runs the activity for you during that session, which lasts anything from 60 to 90 minutes. So that's kind of how we run our activities. We'll have more than one facilitator if we have more than 50 people, and we sort of manage it in that way. The second question was about how do we work with people who cannot use Zoom, and we have run a number of events where we haven't been able to use Zoom. So there's two ways of doing that. The first way requires a bit of planning up front for the organizer. So let's just say the client has to use MS Teams. So we've run events using MS Teams, but it doesn't have the same, or we certainly haven't found the same slick solution of breakout rooms. Now this is changing all the time. That's probably the caveat to this, is I think a lot of organizations have seen the success of breakout rooms within Zoom, and I'm sure that will start to permeate into other solutions. So I guess some of my comments are relevant now, but might not be relevant in 3 weeks' time. That's my caveat. But we've got clients who are using MS Teams as an example. They have to, we ask them to allocate teams beforehand and allocate a team captain whose job it is to set up a separate breakout room using their platform. So let's just say I'm the team captain and I've got Bruno, Paris and Anna in my team. I will email them all and set up a separate breakout room. And then we'll join the main session. So that's all done before the event, in the week before the event. And then we all join the main session for the briefing, and then everyone jumps out of that into their own breakout rooms, and then they come back into the main session. It works very well. We've run a number of events like that. It isn't quite as smooth as using Zoom. It does require a little bit of pre-organizing, but it has the same impact in that people are working together as teams. The second angle is certainly with very big groups, is where we deliver perhaps more of a presenter-led experience. And in fact, we've got an event next week for 1,500 people where we're going to be doing it more as a presenter-led experience in their platform. So we're going to be delivering it with a presenter. Everyone's downloading onto their smartphones and playing individually, but they've actually been split into teams, so they're contributing to a team score. So we've got countries and regions against each other from a multinational company, and then they're feeding their scores into a team total. So that's that works incredibly well as well. So there's two different ways in which you can adapt this solution if Zoom isn't an option. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So now I'll pass to Bruno.
Well, there's a question here, and to give a break to Johnny to drink a sip of water. There's a question here from Yvonne Chang. Yvonne Chang is working for TTG China, and it's a question to Macau. Macau just announced a 3-stage recovery program for tourism. Any thoughts from MISE? And as for virtual team building, which destination and markets, which destination, markets, and industry clients are more into this? And do you see virtual team building becoming a new trend as part of the hybrid events after COVID? Well, as for the first question, regarding the comments to the government 3-stage, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of the details at the moment. I think this is a bit offside the audience today. We have a very international audience. Most questions are coming actually from outside Macau. Regarding the trends, I think I would like to John, if you can place the slide, the benefits of virtual team building, I would like to remind this to the audience. I think definitely as teams are now working from home or working from different locations, and as they are more used to the virtual experience, remote experience, there's no doubt that hybrid events and remote team building has come to stay. Of course, it's a very, very new thing in the market, so it will take time to take over. Usually, teams that are more communicative in the industries like IT and are more used to use all these tools. And we anticipate that these industries and markets will be using more and will be more prone to use virtual team building or remote team building. But this is a question I would like to pass to Johnny. What are the industries that are more, demonstrate so far a biggest appetite for the remote team building?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really broad section of society. I think we're not seeing any one particular sector doing this more than others. Certainly, some sectors are embracing it more. So I guess businesses that are used to working in with remote teams already, we found have kind of embraced this quite quickly. I spoke to a client last week who is part of a local council in London, and they didn't have laptops. So when COVID-19 started, they very quickly had to move out of their offices, get laptops. So it's fair to say, as that sector, they weren't particularly tech savvy. I think anyone who is not tech savvy as an organization or is not potentially set up to work in this way is always likely to be later adopters of this sort of solution. Whereas I think companies that are already used to working in an international way with other offices, with remote workforces, this is not such a big leap. It's not a massive game changer in that respect because people are used to working in this way. So that's probably, it's a little bit anecdotal, but it probably doesn't, like I say, we haven't seen any sectors overwhelmingly more open to this than others, but generally as a trend, those are probably the trends that we've picked up on. And like I say, I definitely think it is here to stay. I do think we will engage more with our employees more regularly with smaller, more bite-sized solutions that bring people together weekly or monthly, rather than not communicating effectively with our teams and then having a summer party or an annual party. I think it will become more of a regular intervention that brings teams together. And that's, I think, will be the big shift. Because of course that is much easier to do in this sort of way than it is in a physical way. And that's why I think it's opened people's minds to the possibilities.
Yes. We have here another question, interesting and anecdotal in a way, from an anonymous person. In Macau, we have a problem with people rolling out to work late. So if they are working from home, probably they will barely get out of bed at noon. And can the panel suggest a virtual team building to get up to get them out of bed? I know you guys have a problem that is the daily kickoff. So it's exactly that. So it's a daily exercise where you have to spend maybe 5-10 minutes doing a task.
Right.
So
yeah, and the push notification comes at 8 a.m. So it'll be a little reminder that says, right, get up.
I would say this is not a problem in Macau. I would say this is a problem that we have in different regions of the world.
I think the point is with this is that as people work more remotely, there will be more flexibility in terms of how people work. So invariably, we have people who work better going into the evenings, people who are early starters, and I think we will see more flexibility. Joking aside, I think we'll see more flexibility in working practice, and that will change how we work, and that will change how we bring people together. So actually, if you're working remotely, I think some of the reasons in the past why people perhaps or companies didn't embrace remote working is that you lose an element of, what are people doing? Are they getting out of bed at midday? Whereas actually, if it's more of a results-driven environment, in some respects, in some roles, it doesn't matter. And I think that would be another shift within working practices that comes about as we embrace more remote working, which is a slightly off topic, but I think that's my prediction around remote working and how companies will embrace it, and get the best out of their people. Because of course, there's certain jobs that we all do. It doesn't matter if they do it, 2 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're client facing, of course, the sort of working day is a bit more relevant. But if certainly functions within business which are not tied to the traditional working hours, and I think that will be a big shift as well that we will see.
Well, there's of course, obviously there are cultural differences and the approach to working.
Of course,
it's hardly you can compare many countries in Asia with European tradition of this self-ruling and independence work.
Yeah,
we have a particular question for you from another anonymous person. It's for you, Johnny. How will a hybrid event work with half of the people doing a live version and half at home on remote version? I think this is a question how this remote team building work.
Yeah, of course. And I think this hybrid approach is going to be really interesting. Ultimately, technology is key to that, because the only way to connect people in a hybrid way is going to be through technology. So using technology where everyone's connected as part of the same team, and they can complete tasks regardless of whether some people are physically together or some people aren't, I think is going to be crucial to the next stage of development. We don't have all the answers at the moment, but certainly I don't see it as being a huge leap from what we're doing with virtual. It's a halfway house, and what's going to be really interesting with that is it reflects the working world. Is how do you work in a way where some people are present in the office and some people aren't present in the office, and that I think is the key reflection of why team activities need to be reflective of real life. Because we've seen it at Wild Goose. We've got an office in America and we've got an office in London. The vast majority of people we have are in London. And it's very easy sometimes when you're working in daily life, you're making decisions and talking about things in the London office. And before you know it, you've made decisions and you haven't involved the guys in New York. And you have this sort of a potential conflict where people, where teams go, well, hang on, we weren't involved in that. And it's very easy to do, and it's not done intentionally, but that's reflective of a world in which actually, how do you as a business make sure you're making the right decisions, involving the right people, even if they're not there? So I think team activities that actually are reflective of that real life scenario, I think is going to be really important, because companies, that's a skill that people have to learn. We have to adapt around communication. And in the poll at the beginning, communication was a key thing. How do you communicate with your team? But that's, you know, that sort of hybrid environment is probably the most challenging, because actually when everyone's remote, it's almost easier because it's a level playing field. It doesn't matter if you've got people in London or some in New York. I mean, it doesn't matter because we're all remote. So you behave in one way. If you're all together, you behave in another way. That half and half is the most challenging environment. And I think that will be the environment that will increasingly become the norm. So team activities that encourage people to work together and learn how to work together in that environment will be key. And technology will be central to that, where you can allocate different roles to different people, where certain people have got certain information, others have other bits of information, and you have to collaborate in order to solve the solution, you know? So that's where we see that development going, and using technology to facilitate that.
We have here exactly a question from Zachary Lowe. Is exactly about this hybrid events.
Yes.
So he's asking for a hybrid team building, how do you get the physical crowd to interact with the virtual crowd? That's question number one. And the second question is, how do you do a grand finale together, given the latency from the virtual conference platform? So I think since we were talking about the future of hybrid events, if you can,
it's a good question.
Some insights, yeah.
I think the key is that, and again, I guess going over some of the points I've just made, but the key will be about how do you make the people that aren't physically there crucial to that exercise, and that's through technology and information. So let's just say myself, Bruno, and Paris were all together doing an activity, and Anna was working virtually. The way this would have to work is that Anna has information that is central to the success of us achieving our goal. Because if she doesn't, there's a danger, unless she's very good at speaking up or very good at taking the lead, there's a danger that she may not get so involved in that. Whereas actually, if you can have a system in using technology where you can distribute different information to different people, then everyone has an equal part, regardless of whether you're physically together or not. And that collaboration then becomes increasingly important. And certainly I see that's how we will solve some of the challenges of making sure that the dominant group, which is the group that are together, don't exclude the group that aren't physically there. So that will be, I guess, challenge number one, is coming up with great solutions around that. And the good thing with technology is that's all possible. We're already delivering a few events that work in a similar way like that. So it's not a big leap in terms of that next step. In terms of involving people at the end, in terms of a wrap up, I think, which was the second question, I think you look at doing you could have a physical briefing, but you could also have a virtual briefing. So it could be that actually the facilitator isn't on site. So you have some people together and some people virtually. And actually, if the facilitator isn't on site, then it becomes a way of, you do the briefing and the wrap up very much in this way on a big screen with any of the wrap up solutions, but the person is not there. Again, I think that is a situation which would have been inconceivable 3 months ago. I don't think that would have been something that anyone could have predicted, but I can absolutely see a situation where we're running events where we're not there, but the group are together, which we've already done in the past through some of our self-managed solutions, because we deliver self-managed events where people are physically together, but we offer remote support. So it's not a big leap from that, because actually customers, I think, will make a choice around, looking at the second point on this slide around lower cost, is actually why you pay more to bring a facilitator on site, or actually for half the price, the facilitator can dial in and do the briefing in this way. I know some clients that will certainly choose the virtual presenter, because we can run the event in the same way. We have technology to see what people are doing. We can score the photos and videos as they come in. we can adjudicate on certain matters, and we can release certain elements of the activity regardless of where we are. So I think it will change. It will change how we work, and what our expectations are will change massively off the back of this.
Yes, we have 5 minutes to go. Just to wrap up, I think the hybrid events is something that is starting now, and it will be much more common in future. So many of the questions, there are no definite answers for them. We have another question here from Robert Rogers. I know him. He's based in Hong Kong. He's an event planner, quite a seasoned event planner. He's asking, when designing an online program, what elements do you look at or incorporate to increase engagement? And how do you manage potential distractions? Another difficult question, I understand.
Yeah, no, it's a good question though. I think the key to managing, well, there's two types of audience. So let's probably start with that. So we've delivered events for companies where you've got everyone from the same company, and engagement levels we find are much easier in that environment. So if you've got people who all work for a company, they've got a team activity, it's been arranged, levels of engagement are generally quite high. We see, because everyone's got the app downloaded to their phone, they are automatically engaged. They don't have an opportunity to switch off from that. So that we've seen immediately is a really good way of keeping engagement. And that's why it's really important that we created a solution that meant everyone had the game on their phone and everyone was involved. Because if you've only got one person who's reading out questions or challenges and everyone else has got to listen, that is absolutely the environment where people's minds will start to wander. And that we decided almost straight from the off that we couldn't have that. That would be unacceptable in terms of engagement. Levels of engagement are definitely harder if you have a group of people, I guess like this, where people aren't from the same organization. They don't know each other. So if you organize events where you bring people together who are from different organizations and you want to use a virtual activity to promote, cohesiveness, maybe networking, that is more challenging because people don't have the same emotional connection with the other people in their audience. I mean, we've run events where, if people haven't been engaged or they haven't quite seen this is right for them, they just press leave meeting. And it's a very easy thing for people to do in a virtual world. It's much harder when you're sat at a table with a group of people to say, just to stand up and say, I'm really sorry, this isn't for me, I'm going to leave. That is a much harder thing to do as a human being. Whereas if you're in a virtual meeting and you don't like it and you don't think it's right for you and you're with a group of people who you don't know, to press leave meeting actually is a lot more straightforward. So that's the challenge we find, is when we're running events for groups of people who are not connected in terms of their organization. And that's where, again, having the content on people's phones, everyone being engaged, upbeat from the start, are really good ways to get engagement early on. Because as soon as people make a decision, within 30 seconds to a minute as to whether this is the right activity. So it has to be a very high tempo, quick start. People get into it very quickly. So that's what we found in terms of how we get maximum engagement. We haven't solved it completely. I'll be honest. It continues to be something that we look to refine and tweak because it is a different environment than when you physically got people together in a room. So it's a challenge for everyone around that. Hopefully that answers your question.
I think we have a couple of questions from different people regarding the price point. I mean, what are the prices of these remote team buildings as compared to the traditional programs?
Okay. I mean, all I can say, I guess, is UK and US pricing. So to give you an idea of how we price it, it works out about a third of the cost of us delivering a traditional event in the past. So that's the difference in price. It's about a third of the price.
That's good news. Good news for the market. I think we have time for one more last question. Maybe Anna, you want to maybe from John McClellan.
John McCullen was saying on the chat and then on the Q&A as well. Are you looking at ways to support the return to work?
I didn't catch that very clearly, Anna, sorry.
So a question from John McClellan. Are you looking at ways to support the return to work and ways to engage on the new working experience?
I wonder if that, I know a John McClellan who works in Hong Kong. I wonder if that's you, John. Maybe it is. He did comment on my LinkedIn post. So sorry, just repeat the question again. Sorry, how are we supporting the return to work?
Are you looking at ways to support the return to work and ways to engage on the new work experience?
I think, I mean, specifically in terms of return to work, I think the messaging, again, I guess one of the things we're seeing some clients asking us is obviously where they've had this prolonged period of time where people haven't been together. There is an opportunity around communication to try and support communication as people start to return to work. So we've been having a number of clients come to us with briefs where they're looking for very customized solutions. So they've said, actually, we love this level of engagement. We're really keen to customize the technology in terms of how we can support certain messages that are key to our business. I think that's quite difficult to do on a generic scale, but I think on a specific scale for a client, it's quite an interesting way of using technology to help people return to work, to communicate key messages, to perhaps communicate how people are going to have to work differently, educating your staff around, hand washing and social distancing, and maybe some of the rules around business engagement in the future. I think there's some really interesting ways of using technology and using gamification to reinforce some of those messages. That's quite hard, I think, to do on a generic basis, because I think companies, not just in the same country, but in different countries, will have very different rules and procedures around some of this stuff. So I think probably not generically, but certainly specifically for clients, we're already getting questions like that where people want us to help create gamified solutions to educate the return to work. Hopefully that helps.
Very well. I think we are just 1 hour of our webinar. I think we should wrap up and thank Johnny for this fantastic presentation, and thank everyone present in the webinar. And that's it for today. This presentation will be available, the PDF and the video will be available in our website, misemacao.org. So I hope to see you and everyone else pretty soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.